You're the biggest ass-kissing, backstabbing, butt-sucking bastard!
The Big Bad Booty Daddy, Big Poppa Pump, Freakzilla. Say any one of those names around someone and they will instantly know who you're talking about. Scott Steiner. Scott Steiner got a major break with his brother Rick Steiner as the team, the Steiner Brothers. But he really stood out when he became Big Poppa Pump. The brothers wrestled as amateurs at the University of Michigan. The team debuted in 1989 and competed in many promotions including ECW, New Japan, WCW, and the WWF. They would go on to win 11 World Tag Team Championships before disbanding in 1998. At this point in 98, Steiner would end up changing his entire look. He dyed his hair and goatee blonde except for a streak in the goatee. He would join the NWO, which ended up giving him a much needed cool factor, and he turned heel. Steiner wore sunglasses and surrounded himself with girls. He called himself
The Big Bad Booty Daddy!
He would be a genetic freak who got multiple ladies at once. And the most important part to completing the entire Scott Steiner puzzle were his verbal skills. You see, during the Steiner Brothers days, Steiner wasn't known for his microphone skills and would rarely have standout promos. When he joined the NWO, he was able to be free and say things that others didn't have the guts to say. WCW was weirdly mismanaged at this time, so he was able to get away with saying stuff that anywhere else he wouldn't be able to do.
And you belong where you're at in WCW, because WCW sucks!
WCW would have portions of the show segmented out that included, quote, NWO promo. They would have a rough outline of the point that they wanted to get across, but it was up to the boys to fill in the gaps. There was no heavily scripted promos in WCW. Scott Steiner took this time and said whatever was on his mind. At one point, he started to rant on Ric Flair and told everyone that WCW sucks and they should be watching Monday Night Raw and Stone Cold Steve Austin. He wasn't even feuding with Ric Flair at the time. No one was going to tell Scott Steiner what to say, and everyone listening, well, they loved what he was saying. This, mixed with his character and his in-ring work, made him a true standout. This helped him out so much that WCW had pushed him to the top. He was able to capture the WCW Championship and even hold it until the final Nitro, where he lost it to Booker T. WCW then went out of business. WWF had bought their competition. With that, it was up to the talent to decide if they wanted to try their chances in the WWF. In the buyout of WCW, the talent had the option of finishing out their contracts and collecting the money that they were owed. Scott Steiner decided initially not to join the WWE, and instead he would sit at home and collect that paycheck. In 2001, his contract was up. He would briefly have a short-lived stint in World Wrestling All-Stars and even capture the WWE Tag Team titles and the World Heavyweight Championship. WWE came knocking, and at WWE Survivor Series 2002, he would make his return to the WWE. As I stated before, he was previously a part of the WWE as the Steiner Brothers, but now he'd be bringing in the much-loved Freakzilla persona to the WWE. During an in-ring verbal battle between Matt Hardy and Christopher Nowinski, a siren went off. Holler if you hear me. The Big Bad Booty Daddy was in the WWE. Came out with his sunglasses and the chainmail that he was famous for in WCW. Matt Hardy shoved Nowinski into Steiner and Steiner delivered a clothesline. Then gave both men multiple suplexes and tossed them both out of the ring. Scott Steiner then did his infamous push-ups and got on the microphone. This goes out to all my freaks in New York City.
Big Poppa Pump! It's your hookup! Holler! If you ever!
This was a perfect re-debut for Scott Steiner in the WWE. He could destroy two upper mid-card talents and say his famous lines. From the music, to the look, to the promo, this is the Scott Steiner that we all know and love from WCW. This was a really smart choice creatively from WWE, and it really worked. Scott Steiner looked like $1 million here. The following night on Raw, Eric Bischoff was outside the arena waiting for Triple H to arrive when a limo pulled up, and Scott Steiner got out of it. Eric Bischoff welcomed Scott Steiner to Raw and said this was going to be just like the old days in WCW. All Steiner had to do was sign with WWE Monday Night Raw. Steiner then came down to the ring later that night. Everybody wants to know what took me so long to get to the WWE? He then said he had women nationwide that he had to satisfy. He said when he was sitting at home watching Raw and SmackDown, it made him sick. He said he isn't here to make friends and that nobody can compete with the genetic freak. Chris Jericho then interrupted him and came out with the microphone. He said he doesn't care about Steiner or his freaks or his peaks. He said if Steiner comes to Raw, he won't be the best in the world because Chris Jericho is that. Chris Jericho then heads to the back and Steiner says that he will stick around to see if Chris Jericho is good as he says he is. Holler if you hear me. The main event of the evening was Booker T versus Chris Jericho versus Rob Van Dam for the number one contendership for HBK's World Heavyweight Championship. Steiner would come out and attack Christian, who was managing Jericho at the time, and then attack Jericho, and he eventually cost him the match. RVD would pick up the victory, pinning Chris Jericho after a 5-star frog splash. The bidding war between Eric Bischoff and Stephanie McMahon would be on, and Raw and SmackDown would both try to sign Steiner to their brands. On December 12, 2002, Stephanie McMahon would invite Steiner down to the ring. She would have a contract on SmackDown ready for him. You see, the previous week, Steiner and Stephanie would get into a limo together, and the world would wonder what happened. Steiner would go on to say that nothing happened between him and Stephanie in that limo, and that's the reason he's going to sign with WWE Monday Night Raw. As Steiner was leaving, Stephanie said she would seal the deal, but Steiner said it was too late. Leading into Royal Rumble, Scott Steiner would enter into a feud with the World Heavyweight Champion, Triple H. Steiner and Triple H would have a series of challenges leading up to their match. They would have an arm wrestling match where Steiner would be the clear victor. Steiner would have a pose down with Triple H on the January 6th episode of Monday Night Raw. Scott Steiner and Triple H did different poses, then a group of random judges would decide the winner. Steiner would look like the winner, however the judges would decide that Triple H was the winner. It was clear that these judges were set up by Triple H. Scott Steiner would end up beating up all these guys and stand tall in the ring. Last, they would have a bench press contest. Triple H would say that he's been stringing Steiner along doing all these stupid contests. He didn't care about any of that. He only cares about the World Heavyweight Championship. Steiner said, "Why wait until Sunday?" and came down to the ring. Triple H, who was in a suit at the time, got destroyed by Scott Steiner. Steiner then ripped off Triple H's outfit, leaving him in his socks and underwear. Scott Steiner embarrassed Triple H. Then we got to the match at the Royal Rumble. This match is that infamous match known for the belly-to-belly suplexes, and this really exposed Scott Steiner. Scott Steiner can be a great worker, but he was made to look terrible. All Steiner did was punches, clotheslines, and suplex. In total, there were about a dozen belly-to-belly suplexes in it. Sometimes two workers just don't gel well together. And that isn't the fault of either man, it's just how it goes. And that was the case for Triple H and Scott Steiner. At the end of the match, Triple H brought in the sledgehammer, and Steiner stole it and began using it on Triple H. He then put him into the Steiner recliner. Triple H ended up winning the match via disqualification after Steiner used the sledgehammer. This match was so bad, it was voted the worst worked match of the year by the Wrestling Observer newsletter. After that, Steiner would have another match with Triple H at WWE No Way Out. To sum this one up, it's more suplexes, punches, and clotheslines, and lots of interference from Evolution. Triple H ended up using the title belt and delivering a pedigree to get the win. The match did no favors for either man. They used a bunch of outside interference to hide the fact that these two just didn't work well together. This was the end for Scott Steiner in the main event scene. He would have a program with Christopher Nowinski where he would end up having a debate about the Iraqi war. He would also be in a program with Test and Stacy Keibler where Steiner would team with Test. Then Test and Steiner would get a storyline firing from Mick Foley, freeing Stacy Keibler from them in December. His last match was a part of the 2004 Royal Rumble, lasting over 6 minutes before he was eliminated by Booker T. Steiner suffered an injury in 2004, sidelining him for 2 months, and while he was injured, he was released from his WWE contract on August 17, 2004. Now let's dive in. Let's see what went wrong with his time in the WWE in the early 2000s. When Scott Steiner first came into WWE in 2002, they were using him perfectly. He had his look, his music, and he was able to talk on the microphone. Everything we loved about his persona in WCW. They had him as the hottest free agent with a bidding war with Eric Bischoff and Stephanie McMahon fighting over which brand would sign him first. I even really liked the part where Steiner chose to sign with Raw because Stephanie wouldn't sleep with him. Then came Triple H. Triple H was in the midst of the Reign of Terror. The Reign of Terror was a long period where WWE had given him the World Heavyweight Championship and he buried everyone else who tried to get it. RVD, Booker T, and Scott Steiner, to name a few, were all the guys at the time who deserved the title belt but were never given the chance. The 2 matches Scott Steiner had with Triple H were awful to say the least. This really exposed Scott Steiner, and all the blame for the matches being bad were put on him, even though, as everybody knows, it takes 2 to tango. Having Steiner skyrocketed to the main event scene in theory was a good idea, but it was the wrong place at the wrong time. Triple H was the man. Everybody knew it, and no one was going to take that top spot away from him. He surrounded himself with Evolution and cheated against Steiner to retain his title. If you wanted Steiner to work at this time, you would have been better off building him through the rankings to eventually getting a world title shot, not hot-shotting him to have championship matches. Also, the Scott Steiner that was seen in WWE was not the same heel Steiner that we saw in WCW. His promos weren't the same. It felt more like a writer was writing what they thought he should have said, other than what he really wanted to say. If you look at his TNA run after this, you'll see what I mean. Scott Steiner's best chances for success in WWE were post-WCW buyout. It would have been better if he had a chance to come in during the Invasion. He would have been a sure main eventer and could have had a long career in the WWE just like Booker T did. I mean, Triple H wasn't around during the Invasion, so his chances for success drastically improved.